America's Andy Reid. Give it up for Andy Reid, everyone. Look at how pretty he is. Look how pretty he is. His little face is so pretty.
Undoubtedly, the most well-known Andy Reid
in the world, besides the other Andy Reid.
Mm-hmm. Yes, besides the famous one that won the Super Bowl this year.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And in the middle, squashed between us, is Jeremy Gregg. Does somebody have their audio on? Are you hearing? I'm hearing a little.
I fixed that.
Okay. Yeah. If you have the video running, just make sure it's muted, and that way we won't have any interference. But anyways, welcome to the show today, Jeremy. It's a pleasure to have you. Jeremy Gregg was a student at the Planet Ant quite a while ago. How long ago was that?
Gosh, I think, it's definitely got to be something around 6 or 7 years ago. Yeah, it's been a minute. Yeah, because I didn't start doing improv probably until I got to Detroit in 2012, mm-hmm. maybe, and probably didn't make my way over to take a class at the Ant for another year or so after that, probably.
Where are you originally from?
I'm from Oregon.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm from kind of a smaller town called Monmouth. It's sort of in between Portland and Eugene, right up like kind of on I-5. So
okay.
Two things everybody knows about Oregon: Portland and Eugene.
Yeah,
that's probably the easiest landmarks to like point out. I went to Oregon State though, so go Beavs.
Ah, the Beavs.
For sure. So yeah, then you took some classes with us at the Ant, and then you moved down to Atlanta. Hot Atlanta, as everyone that's not in Atlanta calls Atlanta. You get sick of hearing that, I'm sure.
Were you in Dallas during the Mike Riley years, or what are we talking about?
Riley. I think the second Mike Riley stint. Even Steven Jackson, his girlfriend lived the floor below me my freshman year, so that put that ballpark. Like Jackson,
they were kind of good, right? And they beat Notre Dame.
Yeah, like they beat Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl. One of those ones. I'm not sure.
So, folks, here we are talking about college football on the training center. Improv.
Oh man.
You know what? I didn't know anything about what you were saying at all, but I was like, it's gotta be sports related. I just knew that it's somehow what you guys were saying was sports related.
They had a coach that coached there for a long time, then left, then kind of failed at the other job and came back, which is always funny. Like that'd be like if Mike left to run the Second City Training Center for a while, and then took a step back and came back.
I'll just come back and run the Ant. It's better.
That didn't go that good. That one that didn't go good. I'm back.
He was very successful in both the stints. Like he had good records, and like we were always a sneaky. We would lose a game we shouldn't lose early in the season, and we'd all be hopeless. And then we like win 8 games in a row to end the season, and end like 24th in the AP. And like 3rd in the Pac-10 back when it was the Pac-10. So like, I don't know. It was.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all very interesting college sports talk.
Okay.
To me,
I have been thinking about right now. College football is hell bent on starting the season on time and normal. And we are lucky enough at the Ant to be in a position where we're being very careful, and we're taking it slowly as things progress, and we have no timetable to open. But what happens when people are pushing things to open too soon? The last 3 days, there's been 4 or 5 football teams that got together to run preseason workouts and stuff that have had huge breakouts within their programs, which is just goes to show you how far away we are from actually getting back into our theater space.
Right now we have a record number of cases happening on a daily basis right now in the United States, and yet everybody's still kind of acting like we're ready to reopen. I mean, I heard some people that were like, we did the stay-at-home order already. We already did that. We don't need to do that. It's like, well, it's not really up to you. It's up to science to kind of say, like, this is, like, happening or not, right? I mean, it's ridiculous how people are just like, oh, I'm tired of doing it, so therefore it must be safe now. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
Well, fortunately, we're both in states right now with governors who will kind of back that. Georgia was not a good proponent of that, given their approach to the scenario. So hopefully everyone down there is being safe. So
a little bit of good news in a pretty dark time period in all of our lives was seeing that map of COVID spread and seeing Michigan being the only state that had a 50% or more decrease in cases.
Yeah.
We're doing good. It's not over yet.
No, definitely not over
yet. We're in a good spot.
Yeah, I mean, things are better in Michigan than they are in a lot of other places, but at the same time, I mean, we're still seeing a rise. We're still seeing some numbers that don't look that great. So.
Oh yeah, of course.
So big news in the improv world this week, kind of shook the whole pillars of everything. IO Theater, Improv Olympic in Chicago, one of the hallmark theaters of improv as far as the world of improv is concerned, all over the world. IO is one of the most famous ones that there is. And it was run by stalwart Sharna Halpern for years, who was friends with Del Close, and then she kind of wore that on her sleeve as her claim to fame, that she was the one responsible for Del Close's instruction carrying on into the world. And she kind of, my take, not knowing her, but reading everything that she has to say, she comes off as somebody that kind of is trying to place herself as somebody that's an artist rather than a theater owner. She's kind of like trying to take credit for a lot of success, like Amy Poehler and Tina Fey's relationship. You know what I mean? To me, it does not come off very good when she talks about things in her. If I don't know, did you guys read her letter that she sent out?
I didn't. This week I didn't see her letter.
So she had a letter that was like, in response to somebody talking about a need for diversity at her theater. And she basically used that as a platform to close her theater, which she's gotten under fire before for diversity issues and stuff like that at her theater. And it kind of seemed like, the feeling that it seemed like from me was that she's just like, you know what? I'm done. I don't want to deal with any of this. I'm shutting it down. She kind of used a lot of language in the letter that was like, my community, my theater, my stuff, my art form, all this my, and it's like, man, that is so anti-improv in general, right?
There's definitely people who are pretty frustrated about that specifically, like that comment about like essentially like that she created the community, right? And that sort of the thing is like, no, you didn't create the community. It's a we thing, right? Yeah. I can't say to really know Sharna. Like I've met her, interacted with her maybe a few times. I actually was fortunate enough. I actually got to go. I did the IO 5-week intensive last summer.
Oh.
Chicago. Yeah. So I was actually there for 5 weeks studying, which at the time I did not realize we would be the last class to go through that program, which was a very cool experience because they have amazing structures. The facility was amazing, and I know that the outcome of that letter, or essentially she's citing financial reasons for shutting down, which may perfectly well be valid. Mm-hmm. But people definitely did get a little bit taken aback and frustrated by some of those comments about the community or the need for more diversity. In the past, people have been frustrated as well with her about how she handled the shutting down of IO West. People were very upset. Kind of came in fly by night and shut it down with very little warning. Similar type of thing. Oh, they couldn't afford the rent increases or something. Yeah. And then I know that also, even going back to kind of the rash of sexual misconduct stuff that was kind of sweeping through improv a few years ago, a similar type of thing with that, where people were kind of critical of how she handled the scenario or how she responded, at least. So I don't. It's difficult because it was sort of an institution and sort of an anchor, and like you said, it's sort of a feeder. A lot of people came from it. My understanding is that some of those people like Tina Fey and Amy Poehler were like very good friends with her, even though she was a bit older. But I always got the sense that what you said is true, that she wasn't so much of an artist, but she was like in the room, and a lot of her stories seemed to be more like she was the person who was like taking care of Dylan, making sure he wasn't going completely insane or completely losing it.
Right. Yeah, as he is wont to do. Yeah.
Yeah. He was like a straight up witch. Like apparently, some crazy stories about him. So
I've heard these stories about him as well. Yeah, I mean, I've never worked with IO. I've never met Sharna. All I can glean from is stuff I see and read and hear, and there's a lot of important improv people this week that are coming out and saying some very unkind things about Sharna and the way she ran theater. The lessons we can learn from this are to continue to be open and mindful and accepting. And we say this knowing full well that it's three white dudes that you're watching say this, which is to say that however accepting and open we are, we can always strive to do more and reach out more.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, as far as diversity at the Ant goes, it's been part of our core mission statement for quite a while to increase diversity and acceptance across the board, as well as making our theater, which is widely regarded, I hope, as a place that is a very anti-racist, anti-fascist type of institution, as we always have been. But as Andy said, that there's never a time that you're done pushing for diversity. You're never done doing that. You're always pushing to be more diverse and to be better in that acceptance across the board and lifting up of different voices. And it's definitely something that I've taken to heart myself and worked in the community with. And we can always improve. We can always do better.
The other part of it that people are talking about her are another big problem in improv across the country is that people are complaining that she was potentially taking advantage of performers and their words and their art for monetary value without appropriate compensation, which is another thing that we're always
At the Ant, we don't pay performers for improv shows, for the most part. However, we always have paid for our scripted show performers, and try to make that a thing that we do across the board for any of our shows that are kind of like more than just a walk-in kind of improv show.
It's a different. I mean, nobody's in Detroit improv to get famous and rich from comedy.
Right.
This is a place that you do it, and if that's a goal that you are trying to make, then you move somewhere else.
Basically.
I mean, that's what people who have as big aspirations do. Like Chicago is probably the top place because while I was there at IO, they had an SNL audition that happened while I was there. Right. And so a lot of people, that is the end game. That's the goal. They want to, make it big.
Yeah.
I've never had that approach personally. For me, I have a kind of a technical job, and so improv has sort of been a creative outlet, kind of a release for me from my day-to-day, very logical. Not that improv can't be logical, because
I get what you're saying, though.
Very mathy, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I think there's a lot of reasons that people get involved in the art form, but I definitely think that we're at a place in society right now where maybe we are starting to re-examine the reasons for some of these institutions. Dave Chappelle famously said a while back that, after he had disappeared from the Chappelle Show and done his thing and come back, that Hollywood is a sick place. It is a not healthy environment. It's a horrible place. And it does really screwed up things to people, and it wrecks people. And maybe it's time that we end that that code of being, that way of being, stopping that sick environment that's kind of bolstered by capitalism to give people the idea of what fame actually is. You know what I mean? And I think that it's a lot different. Performance in art is a lot different than what the average person understands it to be, and they all think it's a pathway to become a Robert De Niro or like some kind of thing. You know what I mean? Whereas it's not really necessarily that.
There's a bit of a reckoning this week in the comedy world in that respect as well. I don't know if you've been following the trending of Joe Rogan on Twitter this week.
No, I have not.
I haven't really heard about it.
It's well past time. People have been clipping old podcast interviews or old stand-up bits that he did, just finding misogyny and hateful comments about women, specific women in general, and that whole thing it's abhorrent, and it comes from this style of comedy from like late 80s into the 90s, like Gen X nihilism of like comics, specifically stand-up comics. I don't know that this is an issue in improv as much,
right?
But like the thing, like you can't ever tell me what I can and can't say, so I'm gonna say the worst stuff I can, because that's my style of comedy. Like Nick DiPaolo, people like that, just like like I'm a free speech advocate, but why is that what you want to say? Why is that?
Well, I think that the tone has changed. I think that the entire way that we're viewing this stuff has changed.
Yeah, I think that style of comedy is hopefully, I don't see it as much or at all anymore. There are those, like Nick DiPaolo still out there, like Greg Norton or whatever. Those people still exist, but I feel like they're Bill Burr. Man, Bill Burr is one we could talk about for an hour, because that dude is at sometimes insightful and brilliant, and sometimes so maddeningly like stupid.
I agree.
He is one. Nobody can decide what to think about him, because like both like he will say something that everybody is. I don't know. Yeah.
I know what you mean. I mean, I find myself like Bill Burr, like, oh, that's a fun bit, and then I'll look up something else, and I'm like, yikes, that's the worst fucking thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. So, I think hopefully, I as a comedian am one. My stance on that is you can say whatever you want on stage.
Yeah.
But there are things that, why would you, or why is that what you choose to use this platform for? And I think that what they miss the mark on when they go on their rants about the freedom of speech is that just the First Amendment, it doesn't give you a freedom of consequence of your act. If you're out there and you want to use your platform to say shitty things, then you can't be upset when the reaction to your shitty things is shitty. You don't. Freedom of speech is not equivalent to freedom of consequence of speech. So if you are a comedian that wants to degrade women or talk, make rape jokes or punch down in any way, then you have to be aware that that shit's going to come back at you.
Yeah. And I think there's actually also, not to just single out men, but I think there's a lot of female comics that were also in that same vein, because it was like, this is the way that comedy is done back in those days. You know? And that it would just make the cheap jokes and,
I hate when comedians are like, oh, we can't say anything anymore. Everybody's so...
I know.
There are perfectly brilliant ways to talk about touchy issues in a funny and insightful way.
Mm-hmm.
What nobody really wants to see right now is you punching down at disenfranchised groups of people for a cheap, easy joke. For a cheap, easy joke. That's lazy.
Yeah. Well, think about like, you know, where we're at now. I mean, thankfully we're evolving out of that. But before that, I mean, it was kind of the take my wife please kind of style of comedy that had a foothold, right? Which is also horrible and stupid. It was like
take
that
my
old
wife, please.
that old, like, you know, whatever evolved out of the Borscht Belt tour stand-up kind of 50s, 60s stand-up comedy stuff, you know?
I love stories about stand-up comedy back then because it was fucking run by the mafia, basically.
Yeah. There was a lot of that, yeah.
I've watched like old like stand-up documentaries, and they'll always talk to like guys in their 90s, like Shecky Green, and he's always like, yeah, you know, there was always a chance that I would get shot after a set if I wasn't funny. Like, oh my god.
Oh my god.
Yeah, you know, I don't know, you know, because I guess maybe I don't pay enough attention to some of like the high level, like the real famous artists, or I kind of fade in and out. Like, you know, like now is a good time where I am dipping in and watching stuff, but I've never been the biggest stand-up guy. Obviously, there's some people I enjoy watching. I think at like a more local level, and maybe it's more improv, maybe because it's just more community-based. It's more, you know, it's not, you know, because I've seen people, I know people who do both improv and stand-up, right? At you know, high levels, you know, they're trying to make it. They're semi-touring stand-up comedians and whatnot. And it's interesting how they juggle that or have to do that, right? Because you know, they have to use kind of different tools to pull that off. But I think that hateful stuff you're talking about, at least like in the improv community, and you know, probably anywhere, I would hope, someone that does those kind of things you're talking about, you know, would be called out this day and age.
I was very proud of one of our class groups recently. I was very proud of how they handled themselves. It was a class that was the first meeting of musical improv 1, and a student made some transphobic jokes in a scene, and the group was not gonna let him live it down, and they stopped and they had a big long talk about it, and the guy got defensive and did the whole like, I'm sorry if you got offended kind of thing, and it escalated where he felt not wanted, probably rightfully so, and left, and we gave him a refund. And that was that. And well,
we have definitely have a zero tolerance policy for those sorts of things, but the class themselves were the ones that stood up in that situation before there was even any kind of chance to make a decision in that regard. So I mean, it is really something that the community is pushing on a lot. And it's really great to see that our world is changing. You know what I mean? There's kind of a thought that, you know, as we are in the world right now, that things are kind of accelerating in change due to the interconnectedness and immediacy of communication, that it facilitates a much faster degree of social change. And it feels like that's kind of where we're at in the world right now, where things are just changing for the better. Is what it feels like.
Communication in the 1840s or whatever. If I moved to Detroit from Muskegon, it would take me a week to find out my dad died.
Yep, exactly. And it would be like, you know, we wouldn't hear about Sharna Halpern closing her theater for like months until we read a book where somebody like talked about it or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Von Wank says freedom from consequence. This doesn't mean the ant is going to throw out the Bill Maher chair. Funny enough, the chairs in the black box were donated. It was a part of our reconstruction a long time ago. Not the Bill Maher you're thinking of. Fun fact. It's not the Bill Maher.
And that Bill Maher is a dick anyway, so fuck that guy.
Man.
I'm so happy that Democrats have finally realized that guy's just a neocon dickhead.
Yes, I know. He's such a... Oh, God, I know.
My wife, Anna, she took classes through IO. She took a weekly bus down to Chicago.
Remember that.
When I had class orientation, Sharna, gives you the book, and then at the end of orientation, she has everyone come up for autographs.
That's so stupid. I mean,
I didn't see that. She spoke to the whole big group for my orientation when I was there, and I feel like she came in and she did a Armando set where she was the storyteller, the monologist for the Armando show they do once a week, or they used to do once a week since it's now defunct. The only other time she would usually be seen in the building was for the Deltones, which is a musical improv team. That was like one of their big heavy hitter house teams. But that was like pretty much the only time she would pop in to IO, is my understanding. Maybe for work or business related purposes, but yeah, no, I didn't get an autograph, although I wasn't really super keen on it. I don't know. but I remember Anna was doing that because I took classes at Go in town, obviously not at the AMP, but Anna, when she was I don't know, it was a while ago. I don't want to date anything, but I just remember her driving Justin, or not Justin, sorry. Sorry, just coming to class.
Jordan.
And what's that?
Jordan,
thank you. Sorry, I just fumbled my words there. Which he's a delight. But yeah. But I remember the bus and from Toledo back every week. She was committed to making it through conservatory at Second City, I think.
She went all the way through IO. No, all the way through Second City and then halfway through IO.
Yeah.
Taking a weekly bus down to Chicago. That's commitment.
Yeah, that's a lot of time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So now we're at a point where UCB has gone through a whole bunch of crap. IO is closing. The Annoyance and Second City are still alive. However, Second City is definitely still struggling with a lot of the reformulation and stuff.
Second City fired their president's CEO stepped down.
Yeah, their CEO stepped down. Yeah.
There's smaller communities. That are having a bit of a reckoning.
I have personally gotten messages from a couple people that their communities are completely fucked, and it's surprising that these smaller communities, I'm not going to single out anything, but it's just kind of insane how much is changing. It's incredible.
But it's time.
It really is.
I read a story in the Baltimore Sun. The Baltimore Improv Group that hosts the Baltimore Improv Festival.
Yeah.
One of their founders or presidents left this week or last week because of diversity issues. They're one of their most popular teams there is an all-black cast show, and they found a grant to do an abroad tour, and he denied their grant because he said they weren't good representatives of the theater.
What?
Yeah, and now that and some other comments he had made over the years came out this week, and they made a change. So the same thing. I know I don't want to keep bringing up college football, but
yeah, you do.
This week, there's been teams. UCLA said that they're not going to start practicing. The players aren't going to start practicing until they have an outside medical advisor help them with precautions, because they don't trust their coach to do it safely.
Yeah.
Another team said that they were going to sit down until their coach opened up about his sketchy stuff because he was photographed wearing a One America News T-shirt.
Oh God.
So they had to have people we're in a moment in history where people who have been stifled forcibly or too scared to speak out are finding a voice and making real change.
Yeah.
It's not just improv, it's major institutions all across the country and all different fields, and it's pretty fucking cool.
It really is. It's an unprecedented amount of change to be happening. I mean, even during the 1960s, which if you're a student of history and have read about all the insane shit that was going on back then, I mean, things changed so fast, but we are changing even faster than that, which is just crazy to even consider how much is changing.
And when you talk about crazy things from the 60s, you're talking about like hippies and summer love, right?
Yes. And the Vietnam War and Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Oh, the music.
And that's it. That was all I was talking about from the 60s.
Yeah. When baby boomer everything was terrible and everybody was bombing everybody, but the music. Oh.
I always remember this. I don't know. This is like a little off topic, but there was this movie with what's his name, Dennis Hopper, and it was an advertisement in the late 80s, I think, and it was like it was Dennis Hopper saying this quote, which I thought was really stupid. But at the time, it seemed like, whoa, this could happen. He was like, the 90s are going to make the 60s look like the 50s. And turned out the 90s were not edgy in any way, really.
I don't know, man. Pants were huge.
It's true. They had the biggest pants ever back then.
Pants were huge and hair was spiky.
Yeah.
You put a textbook in the back pocket.
Yeah, you really could. Yeah, you really could.
Pretty edgy, yeah. Hair was so spiky and frosted, and pants were so big, and vests were so shiny.
Oh yeah.
Boy bands were big in the 90s.
What was?
Boy bands?
Oh yeah, big time in the 90s. Yeah, that was the era for sure.
I think that if we look back on IO, their biggest failure was not fighting the International Olympic Committee hard enough to keep the name Improv Olympic.
Yeah, really, right?
It's so
bizarre. It's so bizarre that the Olympics would go after him for that trademark or whatever.
The IOC is so serious about the word Olympics that any instance of anybody using the word Olympic, they're gonna go after. So it's funny that they were called Improv Olympic for as long as they were, because for whatever reason that they are really stringent. They're like Disney with their trademark.
Crazy.
I mean, also I don't know when it changed, but I mean, like you said, back in the day, pre-internet, pre-communication, right? Things could probably slide by just in the city of Chicago without someone getting wind of it in the Olympic HQ, whatever, for a lot longer. So, yeah.
We do have a question from Victor. What lessons have you learned in the training center that you can apply to real life?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Okay, well, I'll say this, because actually, when I started with improv, and actually my introduction to it, outside of maybe watching Whose Line Is It Anyway or something on TV, is actually my first week I used to live in Denver. That's where I started my career. And I met a girl just out, and we became friends. And she actually performed at the Bovine Metropolitan Theater in Denver. And so I actually saw her do a couple shows throughout the years there. And I always thought, maybe I should take a class, because at the end of the day, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to meet some people. You're going to improve your public speaking skills, gain some confidence, again, in front of other people. There's really no downside. And then for me, when I moved to Detroit, actually, one of my coworkers, the second day I think I was in Detroit, had a class show. over at Go, and they made a whole work event of it, and we went and watched and stuff. And so a few months later, I asked him, I'm like, hey Dan, are you still doing this? He's like, yep, classes start next week. And so then I ended up taking classes and went through the program at Go before I took some classes, or I took classes at the end, I think at the same time, but I started over at Go, and I have, great friendships with everyone that was in my cohort. I had a strong group, the classes were probably 10 or 12 people. I think there were 6 of us that went from level 1 all the way through advanced 4 together, right? And I've been to their weddings, and we've even though I haven't been physically there because I've moved again. So there's really, and stuff, there's just, like life skills, like listening, right? Like the ability to listen, to really pay attention, like those kind of things that, you can definitely find a way to work into your job. I try to bring in improv games or activities into like kind of like the training stuff I do at work if I'm trying to like get group mind or group think, or like, trying to get everyone on the same page. So I definitely try to use some of the games and, things like that in a real life scenario outside of theater.
Yeah.
So I would say, go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, you first. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that those are great examples, Jeremy. It's a lot of that stuff, like we'll be hired in to teach stuff to people in those situations, like businesses. And I think that like us being so ingrained in improv, sometimes we forget how potent and how important a lot of these skills that we constantly are using are. And how foreign to some people they are, actually, It's like when I do corporate workshops, some of the stuff that seems very simple and like not even like a great improv game, like here's just a warm-up that we're going to do that's really simple, people just love it. And it's because they don't have anything like that in their lives. We, in general, as far as like non-improv people go, I feel like there is a very a huge lack of play in most social interactions, and that a lot of play becomes just very basic and very underexplored because a lot of people are hesitant to do that with each other. They don't want to play, they don't want to have fun, they don't want to be goofy, they don't want to be vulnerable with each other, and you kind of have to be able to do all of that if you want to be good at playing. So I think a lot of those basic skills like vulnerability, being able to be vulnerable with people, being able to let yourself look like an idiot, all of that stuff is super important in life to be able to be a happy person. And improv absolutely bolsters that for you,
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a ton of real life application to this art form.
Yeah.
We've just like Mike and Jeremy have said, like it will increase your ability to speak in public. You gain confidence, easier to meet people, easier to let yourself go in public, be free. There's studies. There's sociologists are studying positive societal benefits of improv study. Our friend Peter Felsman is working at the Alan Alda Institute studying improv in society. I think that one of the best things it does is stops you from just saying no to stuff. Like, you obviously yes and's the general rule, but if you really think about how often you turn down opportunities or say no to somebody. Do you want to do this? Nah. Do you want a piece of this? Nah. Do you want to get in? Nah, I don't feel like it. I'm gonna. I feel like improv helps you turn that part of your brain off a little bit and accept new experiences and opportunities that you might have said no to just because you were too unmotivated to try something new.
Yeah. And, it reminds me too, because there was one class that I took in Atlanta. It was someone named Amanda Roundtree. She taught this class. It was called Level 4 High Wire Comedy, which was sort of one of my home in Atlanta for improv until it shut down actually a year ago. So before all of this stuff happened.
What was the name of that theater?
High Wire Comedy.
High Wire Comedy. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't exist anymore. They kind of had to move spaces. There's some stuff there.
What theater did we
really...
come? What theater did we come down to when we visited you guys for the festival?
Oh, okay. That was probably at the Village Improv Theater.
Yeah,
they host an improv festival, so they've got 2 stages. They're a great community.
Yeah.
And I took classes everywhere in town, so I took classes there. And the other big one is probably Dad's Garage, which has an amazing venue, and they're just an amazing organization, a nonprofit. Both those communities are great. J-Star has the basement. And there's a few other, so there's quite a few communities in Atlanta. Atlanta has a really big acting population, like actors, because a lot of them moved from LA to Atlanta for film stuff.
After copy and pasted our tax credit.
Yep, basically.
Well, they are very liberal with the tax credit. I can say that much. Yeah. It's pretty much like, if you see something at the end of the show and it says like "Made in Georgia" with the peach on it, that means they got the tax credit.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have moved out there for the filming opportunities permanently, and so that means that improv is not just a bunch of people from the community who maybe did acting in high school or something. These are sometimes like working professional actors who have like commercials and auditions and film things, and it's like it's kind of cool. I guess it could be intimidating in some regards, but obviously there's a space for everyone there, so it's really cool. But what I was going to say with regards to that, as far as how it could use to improve your life, Amanda teaches a class. I think she still teaches it independently, and I'm not sure what she calls it, but essentially it was a class all focused on emotions, like really heavy emotional work, and a lot of like really longer scenes, like 10 and 15-minute long scenes, things like that. And I struggled with it the first couple of classes. I remember I was really struggling to figure out to crack that nut, because just maybe me being just a guy or whatever, I sometimes am a little guarded with my emotions for sure. It's not something that's always easy to let out. So to really kind of
socialized that way.
What's that?
I think we're socialized to be that way. We're raised to be to guard our emotions and to not allow them to be shown.
Right, and it was really hard. It took me a couple classes in before I kind of was able to maybe be comfortable with it. But once I did, I had some people in the class with me who gave me some feedback after a scene, after one class, and I've never seen you like that before or something. It was just really cool because it felt different, and it was one of those. It's probably the only class I ever thought of I should go back and take that class every single year of my life just to have a refresher to tap into that a little bit more. So
that's good.
If you can find things like that too, because every school, every teacher, every course you take is going to have a different spin from the teacher's point of view, from what they're trying to get at from the theater's perspective, right? All the different theaters have their own philosophy on what improv is or how it can be taught. IO is very different from Second City, and it's very different from Annoyance, right? So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, there's not, when people are like, "Who's your favorite teacher?" It's nobody. It's not it's not really who's the best teacher. It's more like who's the best teacher for you. Yeah. Because
I'm always, who's the best teacher? Who said the most nice things about me?
It was me, right, Andy? No, but that's really true, though. It's there's so many. I mean, that whole concept of best and worst, all that shit. It's so based on an old way of thinking as well, and people think that there has to be a best, but it's so subjective and so based on your own personal needs and wants.
I don't think it's any secret that people that seek out a stage on which to perform might be a little bit of attention seekers. I don't think that's any big secret.
Right.
Most people that want to perform on stage want attention, and I've always thought it's interesting when you get into it and groups or classes give you the thing all right, I want you, teacher, to stop pulling the punches. We want it all. And you get there, and then it becomes an issue because everybody's uncomfortable and they feel bad.
Yeah.
But there's a part of it that's like people struggle to take their ego out of the no. Sometimes when and I'm sure we've all had that. I've had that. I know I've gotten a note and taken it a little too personally, but we have to separate our egos and our personalities from our performance notes because, well, I think in that way we just have to realize that shit is just going to make us better in the long run. It's not a personal attack. Trust us. Every improviser has been in countless terrible, shitty scenes that were their fault.
Yeah, absolutely. No question.
So a note is not a personal attack in any way.
One of the most horrendous times for a human being is to learn a new skill. I've seen it over and over and over again. I used to teach computer skills to senior citizens, and in that environment, the anger that would happen from very simple corrections in certain regards, like, for example, some student like holding up their mouse and trying to use it to point something on the screen. That's not how that works. And then the person getting angry about that because they had to learn that that's not how you use a mouse. There's a very natural thing that happens with human beings when you're learning a brand new skill that you get kind of upset. I've seen it happen in many different regards across the board with all kinds of different things that I teach. And that's one of those things that you have to not punch yourself or beat yourself up and not lash out towards the crowd as well. And both of those are tactics that people perpetuate when they're in the process of learning stuff.
Anyone with grandparents can believe you when you say that old people freak out about technology.
Dude, the thing is, though, here's the myth is that a lot of people say that it's only old people that are like, oh, they're having a hard time with technology. I will challenge that. I had a student one time, he started taking classes from me when he was in his mid-90s. And by the end of it, he was like 99, and he had hired me to build a custom PC for him because he'd gotten to the point where he was making friends that were online only and had this whole all kinds of online communities and stuff he was involved with, and he was like 99 years old.
He was on 4chan.
Yeah, he was really big into the alt-right. He started this huge wave of hatred across the country. No. And his name, Joseph Goebbels. No. Really nice Argentinian guy. But no. He was a super nice guy. But but I've also met young folks that just don't know what the hell's going on with technology, like kids in schools, where you're trying to and I've been shocked by how some kids don't really understand it at all. There's this very big gap, which is really interesting.
We're kind of running into that right now. Both Mike and I teach with the Detroit Creativity Project, and it's surprising and sad how big of a hurdle the technology part of all of this is going to be when we are looking into bringing our classes for these kids online.
So we're going to be doing online classes with the DCP this fall.
In 2020, it's very sad to think about how many kids in our community don't have access to enough internet or screens to take advantage of these online education courses. And they're I don't know what the answer is. I don't know, but
that's definitely a thing that is. Victor says he's practically a Luddite and he's not that old. How old are you, Victor? Just kidding.
I was going to say shout out to you guys. Props on both of you guys working with the Detroit Creativity Project. That's a great organization.
Yes.
Aware of it out there. It's a charity, so you can donate to it. I just remember, I think the first time I was exposed to it was actually at the Detroit Improv Festival, and I was seeing Keegan-Michael Key do a set with the kids from that program. And that's something that, if I had remained in Detroit, it was something I was definitely interested in, trying to get, it's a very cool way to get back, but I agree that I think that the exposure to technology is not having access at a young age, because, I see some kids, 6 years old and they can use an iPhone. And I mean, me personally, I had computers in the house my whole life. Like my dad was a pretty early adopter from what he was working on. So I've been exposed since I was just a little infant. But
I mean, that is the thing, is access, and it's a huge, huge divide as far as privilege goes. I mean, the whole thing, if you read how Bill Gates actually had like an up and coming kind of thing when he was a kid, like he was given unprecedented access to supercomputers and all kinds of stuff that at that age, and he was in an incredibly wealthy school in a very privileged place. I mean, I had computers my entire life too as well, Jeremy. Like my parents were very, they thought it was very important to make sure that I was like involved in technology, and I think about that, and I think about how they had the ability to do that. Even with my dad as a blue collar like steel worker, we were still able to afford something like that, which made a huge difference for me because it made me able to make a career out of that as well. Like I was able to live off of my technology skills, and and that's like a huge difference for people with that privilege. But yeah, it is important to like, going forward, I mean, internet access is going to have to be something that's like a human right in this country, and that's going to have to change very soon. We're not going to be able to rely on the kindness of Comcast or the friendliness of AT&T in order to get you your internet when you're going to have,
Mike, hold up there 1 second. Are you telling me that giant mega corporations might not have our best interest at heart?
I mean, that might be this might be like a very conspiracy podcast type of thing to say, but that's just my take on it.
Whoa. Are you trying to tell me that rich folks don't maybe they're not thinking about the little guy?
I mean, we'll just have to discuss it next week. I don't think we have enough time to get into it.
Yeah,
I do wonder at what point people will no longer remember the sound that like the dial-up modem makes.
Oh yeah, I mean it's already getting like that, right?
Yeah,
but but on the other hand, like when Andy and I go teach classes with the DCP, sometimes we start a class and we're like, "Hey, who here knows what improv is?" And it used to be no hands went up. Now it's like a lot of hands go up almost every single time. I
watched an episode of Seinfeld last night, and they were at a restaurant, and George needed to use the payphone, but he couldn't. Like there was too big of a line, and so he couldn't use the phone. And the whole thing, it just was like, man, like that has no context in present day life at all.
Yeah, I know. It's completely not even a thing at all, which is fantastic because payphones sucked. Honestly.
I constantly have a telephone in my pocket, and at any given moment on any given day, the absolute last thing that I want to do is make a phone call.
Exactly. It's the least important and least powerful thing that your phone does. It's kind of amazing,
Yeah.
God, yeah, really nuts. Facebook user says, "What is improv?" Hey, we're at the tail end of the show. What a perfect time to talk about what is improv. What the hell is it? Jeremy, do you want to field that?
Ooh, that's a definition. That's fine.
That's called pimping, by the way. Go ahead.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's really just, kind of, thinking on your feet and being able to, take a point of view or take an opinion and have a scene, have a conversation. Essentially, you're acting without a script, right?
Yeah.
So you're taking that point of view, that opinion, that emotion, that want, right? However you want to frame it, but you're taking something that you want, that you're passionate about, and ideally there are like principles, we call them rules, whatever. A lot of times scenes will go better if at the top people agree. There isn't necessarily a lot of conflict. That doesn't ruin a scene. It's just there are things with experience and technique that allow you to navigate around scenarios as you get stronger in those skills. It's a skill like anything else. people will be naturally better. Earlier, we were talking about people being self-critical in improv or in classes, and maybe people are frustrated because someone else seems like they're amazing. I had that happen where I was took a class with someone. It was like a level 1 class, and it was like, why are they so good? Oh, yeah, they did improv for 4 years somewhere else, and then they're taking one. Like, it's so again, it's one of those things where experience is a big factor in it as well. You take a class, and hopefully, maybe you'll get hooked. Maybe you'll meet some friends and get drawn into it, because at the end of the day, for me, and it's personal for everyone. For me, it's a release, a creative outlet, a way for me to kind of be a different side of myself than a very critical, analytical, business-driven mindset that I have to deal with. Right now I'm actually kind of double dipping on work. I'm working crazy hours, and partially because of the COVID stuff going on. If I'm doing that 60 hours a week, it's nice to have a release, go to class once a week or meet up with my troupe, and put on a Herald or something. So that was probably a bad description or a bad definition, but
I don't think it was necessarily a bad description. I just think there was a lot of content within that description.
Yeah.
But you did say the key to me, which is acting without a script.
There you go.
And it's generally comedy. Yeah.
What is improv? Remember when David Copperfield made the Statue of Liberty disappear?
Mm-hmm.
This improv is like that, but instead of the Statue of Liberty, you take a stage, and instead of making it disappear, you make a whole world appear on it with just your mind.
Ooh.
So there's the worst. That's the worst description of improv I can think of.
I'm gonna try one. Remember when cavemen used to just didn't have TVs or anything, and they would just sit around a fire and do stuff? That's improv.
Yeah.
Maybe distill it down and just say it's like learning how to play again.
Yeah,
right?
That's exactly it. Yeah, learning how to play again. Well, hopefully, Facebook user, who I don't know who you are, that helps you. That's Mahmood. It just didn't show his name. Come on, Mahmood. You know what improv is. But that's great. But that's all the time that we have for today's show. Any final thoughts, Jeremy?
No, I just hope everyone is staying safe, and hopefully that these communities will continue to live on past this, all the improv communities, and where they fall down. Hopefully, like the IO thing we talked about earlier.
Yep.
Things will take its place in the community. Someone will come back and people will build it back up. So again, I hope you guys are doing safe. I'm excited. I haven't seen the ant hall yet because after I moved is when you guys built that. So I know.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Technically, I think there's a poster waiting for me there still. Technically, from whatever my donation was.
There probably is. Yeah, there probably is.
Yeah, it's great talking to you guys. Great catching up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was really nice to have you on the show. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. Any final thoughts from you, Andy?
I just hope everybody out there is happy and safe, and that you'll come see us do improv when we can.
If you can't be happy, at least be safe.
Yeah.
That sounds like a sign off, so I don't know. I guess that's if you can't be happy, at least be safe. Good night, everyone, from Planet End.
Yeah.
See you next week, everybody. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Bye.